This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather Ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, May the 24th, 2011, one of the biggest moments in Canadian hockey history happened. Well, the past 30 years. And no, it's not Olympic based. It's the Vancouver Canucks winning the Western Conference playoffs to face the Boston Bruins for the Stanley Cup. Facing the plucky San Jose Sharks, they beat them in 5 games, including a double overtime winner. You had to see to believe. So anyway, Vancouver had won the first 2 games of the conference finals by a score of 3-2 and 7-3. The Sharks came back to win game 3, 4-3. However, the Canucks stole momentum, winning 4-2 in San Jose and needing a win on home turf to take down the Sharks in 5 games and to put on a clinic and go to the Stanley Cup playoffs. So it was fungus and all that. The Sharks were the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. The Canucks were the number 1 seed. The Canucks had to face Chicago, and it was an epic series. Vancouver was actually up 3-0 on the defending Stanley Cup champions, who somehow squeaked in, and they were the 8th seed? Really? Anywho, Chicago won the next 3 games and put Game 7 to overtime. However, Alex Burrows stole a pass, was onside, slapped it past Corey Crawford and into the net, and Jim Houston on CBC put it perfectly. It's a beautiful night for an exorcism because of how Vancouver always seemed to get their butts handed in by the Blackhawks in the playoffs last few years. Anyway, San Jose with the 2 seed, they took care of the 7 seed LA Kings in 6 games, and I believe that's when Joe Thornton ended the series in overtime. Anyway, Vancouver would take on a plucky Nashville squad, and even though Kitchener's Matt Helichuk scored a goal, overtime goal for Nashville, the Canucks still won the series in 6. The Sharks and Red Wings battled each other tooth and nail as well in that series. And the Sharks, just like the Canucks the previous round, were up 3-0, and the Red Wings forced Game 7. Fortunately, though, the Sharks managed to squeak in 3-2. So it was weird how, Sharks were up 3-0, like the Canucks, lost the next 2 games, but had to win Game 7. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ledger, the 1 seed Washington Capitals were swept by the 5 seed Tampa Bay Lightning in the conference semis, and the 2 seed Flyers were also swept by Boston, who were the 3 seeds. So Tampa and Boston would meet in the conference finals. It would take a few days, but Boston would win Game 7 at home against Tampa to go to the Stanley Cup finals against those pesky Canucks. So anyway, the first period saw the Canucks strike first on a goal by Alex Burrows, he of the overtime heroics against the Blackhawks to send them home from the Sedin boys, Henrik and Daniel. Kevin Bieksas was in the box when Dan Boyle shot from the point and tied the game from Pavelski and Marlowe. And then Devin Setaguchi scored in the first minute of the third period from Pavelski and Ken Huskins. The Canucks were up against it. They were down to it. They had the empty net. And somehow Henrik Sedin found Alex Edler, who found Ryan Kessler, who puts it in with 14 seconds left. And the Canucks had tied the game at 2. So anyway, overtime was beckoning, and people were like, well, who's going to win this game? When will it end? How will it end? And all that. It turned out to be a epic that went to double overtime, and halfway through the second overtime period, the Canucks had the puck in the zone, and somehow everyone thought, where's the puck? Mysteriously, the puck was so mysteriously placed. CBC didn't even have the angle, and then somehow there was a shot that beat Antti Niemi and into the net, and the Canucks had just won their trip to the Stanley Cup finals, and it was Kevin Bieksas from Edler and Burrows. It was a beautiful goal and all that. It was like, what just happened? CBC showed the replay, and people thought, oh, it went over the stanchion. It did not. It hit the stanchion, and bounced out towards Bieksas, who knew where the puck was, and slapped it past Niemi. And the Canucks, 17 years after their last Stanley Cup appearance, got their trip. So they did it. Yeah, 17 years to the day, ironically enough. And the Canucks, well, their last appearance at to that point in 1994 was also a double overtime game, this time against the Leafs in Game 5, ironic enough, and Greg Adams was the hero, but that was in the first minute of double overtime. So practically the Canucks had won a game on May the 24th in double overtime in Game 5 to send them to the Stanley Cup Finals, just like in 1994. So the Canucks were in their third Stanley Cup final as a franchise in history, and it was just glorious. It was like, what just happened? So yeah, that was just freaking all that. There were some YouTube comments on the goal that I saw, and one of the major comments was that it was the ghost of Luc Bourdon who somehow managed to get the puck to Bieksas, and Bieksas scored. Now, for those of you who don't really know, and I don't blame you, is that Luc Bourdon was a promising defenseman who was a very good defenseman with the Canucks AHL affiliate and was moving up through the ranks in the Canucks organization. Unfortunately, Bourdon would die in a motorcycle accident in a couple years before this game. And all that. A promising defenseman passing away. And then, a lot of people said that was a ghost goal because, maybe he wanted the Canucks to make the Stanley Cup final somehow. But I mean, what was there to say that the Canucks would have had a clean goal to win Game 5, or maybe go to Game 6 and win in San Jose, or win Game 7 on home turf? So anyway, regardless of that, the Canucks made it to the Stanley Cup Finals and all that. The whole Luc Bourdon thing is kind of eerie because a couple years later in 2013, people watched Baltimore with a chance to kick the tying field goal in the AFC title game against the Patriots, and somehow it went wide left, even though Billy Cundiff was a pretty good kicker. And a lot of people said that was Maya Kraft, Robert Kraft's late wife, the ghost of Maya Kraft that pushed it to the left and got to the Patriots to the Super Bowl. I think it was like 2012 or something. Was it 2012 or 20? Yeah, 2012. Sorry, because I know that the Ravens went out to get Justin Tucker, and it was one of the best moves they ever did. So regardless of that, the Canucks were in the third Stanley Cup Finals. I mentioned '94, but did you know that the Canucks also went to the Stanley Cup Final in 1982? In a shocking move, the Canucks actually fed off how pathetic the Western Conference, or the Campbell Conference as it was called, was. The Oilers were the class of that conference, but somehow the Kings beat them in the first round when it was a best of 5 in Game 5 in Edmonton, of all places. We all know about the miracle in Manchester, but still, the Kings could have lost that series, and they nearly did. So anyway, the Canucks, went through. They took out the Kings in the division final, faced the Blackhawks, who were not really the best team around. But that North division in 1982 was just pathetic. So Canucks went to the Stanley Cup Finals, got their butts handed to them by the New York Islanders, who swept them to win their third straight cup. And of course, '94, the Canucks used 3 overtime magic goals to vanquish the Flames in the first round, take care of Dallas in the second round, and take care of a very wheezing Toronto Maple Leafs team who had to deal with the Sharks and beat them in 7 in second round. Canucks forced Game 7 against the Rangers, lost on Messier's winning goal, and of course, that. Unfortunately for Canadian hockey fans like myself, a Canadian team winning the Stanley Cup for the first time since 1993 did not happen. Even though that the Canucks and Bruins had some great matches. Canucks won all 3 home games before Game 7, and the Bruins won all 3 home games of their own. Vancouver would win them by tight scores, 1-0 in game 1. Game 2 was an overtime goal with 11 seconds remaining, and game 5 was tight too. Boston blew out Vancouver in Vancouver when it counted the most, and somehow won game 7 4-0 in Vancouver, precipitating Boston's first Stanley Cup in 39 years. And of course, Vancouver writing for the second time. They did so in 94, then they had to do it in 2011. Stupid, but that's stupid. And yet again, Canada was without the cup. It would take 10 years till the Habs Cinderella run of 2021 before we saw a Canadian team in the Stanley Cup finals. But unfortunately, Tampa took them out quite convincingly. So that's just the history of Canada's cup drought in a nutshell. Anyway, I'm Joe. I'm going to do